Hello ladies, I am going to show you how to first install a Photoshop action and then how to run those actions on the photo that I had done from Mary's senior session. It's this photo right here, image 8371. Okay, so the actions. First, when I open the actions from my emails, it opens up this downloads folder, and they were zip files. So this actually opens that zip file up in my download folder. So when I double click on that, it takes me to where that folder is located, which again is in my downloads folder. Inside of this folder, there are other folders, lots of folders, and you want to look for the files that end with .atn. That is the action file extension, and .atn is for Photoshop only. So anyway, double click on that, and that will, I've already installed these so I don't have to do it, but that will open it up in Photoshop. Look to see if there are other folders with actions in them. This one does have two different folders, so then I would double click on this one also. It will also open up in my Photoshop. So then to find those in Photoshop, make sure that you have in your window option, your actions have a check mark next to them. Your actions option has a check mark. And then you can scroll down and make sure that they do pop up, and those actions are all down here, which I won't be using for this edit because I use different actions. Okay, so I'm going to edit that picture. We'll open up the raw file. When you open up the raw file, I have Camera Raw. So Camera Raw is as close to Lightroom as you can get. I've already done some adjustments here. My temperature is 5900. I added a little bit of warmth. My exposure is at plus 0.25. Sometimes I'll add some fill light. We'll do that to about 10. My blacks for this one, since I want it to be dramatic, I did increase my blacks to 14. My brightness is at plus 50. My clarity is at plus 24, and I changed my saturation to plus 16. Let's change our vibrance a little too. We'll do plus 10. And then you want to open image. Oh, actually I want to change a detail. In your detail up here, increase your luminance to about, I do about 13. I'll go up to as high as 20 something, but for this image I think 13 is about where we want to be. So open image. That's going to open it up in Photoshop where we can actually run some actions. The actions that I'll be using are mostly in the retouch, Florabella retouch, and I can't read the rest of that. Let's see. Retouch and makeover. Some of the other actions that I'll use are in the classic workflow, Florabella classic workflow. So the first thing we're going to do really quickly is clear up a little bit of acne. I'm not going to do this perfect since I'm trying to do a video, but I'm going to use the patch tool, which is under the spot healing brush tool. It's the one that looks like a patch. So we'll just highlight a little bit of the acne. You wait till you get the, you highlight, you circle it, and then you want the two little squares to pop up, the two patches. And that means you can sample from another area. So here's our bad spot down here. I just go around it, hover over till I see the two squares, and drag it over to a clean spot. We've got a few stray hairs and things. I'll do a really quick action to get rid of those. Again, I'm trying to be fast. We're going to do the spot wrinkle eraser to get rid of hair. It also, of course, gets rid of wrinkles and scratches. That action's running, so you just let it run. Sometimes actions will require you to click OK or other things. If the action actually stops and makes you click something, just click OK or Enter. Okay. And this one gives you instructions. Use a very small white brush on the black mask to diminish wrinkles. So I have to click Stop. So I want a smaller brush. I'm probably going to do about 25. I'm going to zoom in a little and just get rid of a few of these stray hairs. I'm not going to go crazy since again we're on a time crunch for this video, but I want my opacity up a little higher than that. I want it pretty close to 100. It's on 91 now. Because my brush is small, it makes that area where you erase the hair or the wrinkle really smooth, but because my brush is small, it really isn't super visible that I smoothed it. If it does look too smooth to you, flatten the image first, and then you can go back in with your patch tool, and wherever you smooth that, which I can see it a little bit, you'll just drag it over to another area. You don't want it to have the exact spots of the area right next to it because it'll look like repeated skin flaws. So I go to like a clear area. It still adds that texture that way. Okay, she's got mascara and stuff. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I'll get that little clump right there, and maybe that bad area, just kind of blur it, and I can brighten a little with the powder. I'm going to run a powder action that'll help clean it up a little bit more. We don't want to erase all the wrinkles. I did erase the bottom ones, but we'll leave those right there. Again, the powder will work a little bit. I'll clean this side up too. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of work on the eyes. First, I'm going to sharpen them a little. I want a pretty big brush. This one's a 131 size. Your size of brush is up here. Your sharpen tool is underneath your blur tool, which looks like a water drop. So select sharpen tool and just quickly go over the eyes. You can go over them as much as you want, but this does add a little bit of grain. So zoom in on the eyes and make sure that they don't look too grainy now. Those look pretty good. They'll start to look kind of wet and weird. So now I'm going to do my creamy powder action to kind of smooth her face just a little bit more, and then I'll go back to the eyes. It didn't run. So to run an action, I don't know if you saw me do that. You highlight it, make sure there's a check mark over here. If it's not working, check for that check mark, and then you click play down at the bottom, and then you let it run. And sometimes you'll see stuff going on the screen. It shows you kind of at the full opacity over the entire image what it would look like if you ran that action. We're just going to do this over part of it. We do want a pretty big brush because we're going to go over the bottom part of her face first, and then we'll do a smaller brush and do up by her eyebrows. So this one's like 473. That'll work pretty good. Make my square bigger. So we're going to take powder. This just really smooths out some of those bumpy complexions and teenage complexions, which always seem to have problems. And now we're going to get a smaller brush, probably down here about 176. That looks pretty good. And just go over this. Go over her under eye area to kind of clear up that black mascara. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Again, I'm doing this a lot faster than I normally would. So now I'm going to do a quick eye sparkle. Again, this is in Florabella Retouch and Makeover. So I'm going to run that. And it has two layers that you use, all over brightening and extra iris sparkle. So the all over brightening, you go over the entire eye. I've got the opacity at 55%. And sometimes I'll drop it even lower than that if it looks too fake, because this can make the eyes look really wet. So if you see really wet eyes in someone's edit, that's probably what they did. See, I think that looks a little too much. So I'm going to drop the opacity. That was at 55%, so I'm going to drop it down to about 31. I definitely think less is more with actions. I love actions, but I think less is more. That looks nice and dramatic, but not too overdone. That might even be too much for your taste, but again, just change the opacity if you think it's too much. I'm going to flatten. I just flattened that. I right-clicked on the background and went down to the bottom option, and that was flatten image. Okay, so now I'm going to do smoky eyes. That adds a darkening mascara look and also eyeshadow darken. I'll do the smoky eyes layer first, which adds a little bit more eyeshadow. That's a little too much. Got a bigger brush than I would normally use, but I'm just going to go with it. And then the mascara, I'm going to use a smaller brush for this. And it just darkens it. Again, I have the opacity down to 65, so this isn't the full action. It can really do some some damage. Okay, I went over her eyes too, just to kind of make them pop just a little more where the dark part of that is. I'm going to go ahead and right click on the bottom layer, the background, and flatten image. I do that kind of throughout. For this one, there was a strange handprint from where her hand was on the wall. You can't see it now that I've done a couple of actions, but it's right here. There's her thumb and all of her fingers. So I cropped this image a little just to kind of take away from that. Sorry, I zoom way in and out. So 6 width and 4 height. I'm just going to go in. We want to show her pretty curls, but we can get rid of a little bit of the top of her hair. The interest points I put on my rule of third. I might even turn it just a hair. Looking at my brick lines. That's pretty good. So her hand is still over there, but for some reason it kind of disappears when I run these actions because they put a little vignette. So we'll go ahead and do one of the actions that I did. It's called Add Some Drama. It's in the classic workflow from Florabella. So I run that. I don't usually do this at 100%. So it's at 75% opacity right now. Probably drop it down to about 70. I do like that action. Sometimes it's way too much. But see, that added this vignette and made the handprint disappear a little more. I'm going to go ahead and flatten. And then I did the classic film action, which is also in the classic workflow. I think I just went past it. Here it is. And ran that. That made it a little bit too bright, so I can drop the opacity some. We'll drop it down to about 70. And then I'm going to change my brightness up here. So I dropped that down to -16. That looks pretty good. Let's see what it looks like compared to the edit that I had done for my website. Because I don't remember exactly the order I did things or how I did them, but that's pretty good. It's a little darker still. A little more vignette, and her lips look a little bit darker. So I'm going to do a couple of things.